In fact, you may all be here under somewhat false pretenses. I must admit, I've been looking forward to this, but Anthony kindly billed me as somebody who does stuff and builds stuff. Actually, what I want to talk to you today about is not stuff, but an idea, a very simple idea for the delivery of affordable housing and genuinely affordable housing using an innovative and I hope you'll find interesting land tenure model. But before that, I ought really to tell you what those things were. Is there any way of getting those up? Just quickly.
You carry on now.
I've gone and messed it up now. In fact, what I was going to tell you first was that the biggest building there is our village hall in the village where I live in Somerset, which is a community hall and it was a community project in which we racked the old original POW wooden building in 1,000 straw bales, sitting on 4,000 wine bottles and with 1,500 sheep in the roof as insulation. And built with almost entirely community and volunteer help and mainly built by grannies and children. This one here, as Anthony alluded to, that's a little visitor office that we built at the Red Brick Community project in Glastonbury and is made out of Argos catalogues, 12 tons of Argos catalogues and mainly glued in by children who wrote messages and drew pictures to put them in. And the roof is made out of second-hand random guttering, laid Roman Provençal style, where if the Romans had had Osma, they wouldn't have bothered with all this plastic, with all this clay stuff. We did, in fact, originally intend, thinking of what Rory was saying about branding, we did originally intend to do this in Yellow Pages. But I wrote to Yellow Pages and asked them if they'd help, and they instantly wrote back and threatened to sue me if I used, because they had a brand to protect. And in fact, Argos weren't that keen to begin with because their health and safety people had said that if they let some lunatic build something out of Argos catalogues and it fell over and squidged an unreasonable number of children, that wouldn't be good for their PR. And the latest one is that which is a classroom at Paddington Farm Trust in Glastonbury, which is a charity project for kids from the city to come and learn about farming and where their food comes from and to be grossed out by the idea that eggs come out of hens' bottoms. That's made almost entirely out of pallets. It's sitting on tyres. The roof is made out of vinyl flooring offcuts cut into slates. All the window units are free. And again, that's been built almost entirely by children. But that isn't what I wanted to talk to you about. What I wanted to talk to you about today is very simple, and I must admit I feel a bit overawed by the whole thing. It's a very simple idea. Coming from the Somerset bogs, where Westminster do rather still regard us as having webbed feet, it is an opportunity to be able to come and talk to important people like you in the heart of the metropolis about our apparent surprise at being in a housing crisis, both in terms of numbers and affordability. It's been a long time coming. And I must say, from where I sit on the bog in Somerset, largely our own fault. I think it's been caused partly by stunningly poor planning strategy decisions ever since the war. It's been caused, so far as I'm personally concerned, by a civil service in the Department for Communities and Local Government, apparently totally so obsessed by its own models that it seems not to be able to think outside anything else at all, but largely due to lack of political balls. The problem, of course, which is blindingly obvious, and I feel very out of my depth here when all these clever things are going on, is that it's all about land use and land cost. That's at the heart of it. Round where I live, the same piece of ground costs 3,000 quid if you want to put sheep on it, 30,000 quid if you want to have ponies on it, and over £1 million an acre if you want to build a house on it for your family and children. Now that is just, it's not that it's different land, it's not that it's not suitable for houses. It's simply the way in which we have decided to use our land, especially since we now have farmers around us being paid not to do anything at all with their land. For example, if you Google Earth Somerset, and one of the things I have to say, having come up yesterday to get a feel for what's happening here, I have to confess that it is all pretty London-centric. Now that's because your problems are greatest here. Your pressure on housing is greatest here. Your pressure on affordability is greatest here. And you're going to need all the ingenuity and all the ideas that you've got that are contained in this building to solve it. But actually, according to the figures yesterday of you needing 50,000 houses a year over the next 10 years, actually, Kate Barker's housing needs report in 2003 said we needed 250,000 across the country to fulfill housing need, which means that actually you chaps in the metropolis are only 20% of the problem. So I'm not minimizing the problem, but what I am saying is that 80% of the problem of affordability and housing pressure is also in the rest of the country. If you Google Earth Somerset, and then you photoshopped in all the houses we need dibbled into the little villages, for example, and then you took a photo of that, you'd hardly notice the difference in the photograph. And actually what we then have was probably a few more village pubs, a few more bus services, a few more schools. We'd have enough houses and probably not a carrot less to eat. I suppose when Bill Bryson became president of the CPRE, the Campaign for the Protection of Rural England, in his inaugural address, he said, look, chaps, we've got roughly an acre each between us. If you divide England up, we've got an acre each. So you want to be very careful how you husband that acre and how you use it and what you do with it. So I wrote to him, Dear Bill, I said, on my acre of land, I could put 15 three-bedroom semi-detached houses. But supposing I only put one, just for me and my family, to give us a safe, secure home. That will use up 7% of my acre, leaving 93% of my acre for you to help me look after it. How's that for a deal? What do you think? Needless to say, I did not get much of a response. But I suppose what really brought the issue of land price to me was John Prescott's £60,000 house competition in 2000 and whatever it was. I was at the inauguration of that, and almost everybody who spoke at that presentation spoke more or less rubbish. The gist of it was, we can deliver houses for 60 grand. The gist of it was, that will make them affordable. The gist of it was, if we meet Kate Barker's housing targets of 250,000 a year, the affordability problem will go away. Now, we all know that the government has spectacularly failed to deliver anything like 250,000 houses a year. However, the myth that numbers would solve the affordability problem has persisted. Actually, it was based on a paper that John Prescott asked Reading University to do, which is that, and that, he said, confirmed that if you produced the numbers, the affordability problem would be solved. So I got the paper, and there it is. You will be enormously surprised to discover that it doesn't actually say that at all. What it says is that numbers will affect price, but in order to significantly affect the price, they have to be very big numbers. And you know that we simply haven't produced those numbers. In fact, the only versions of the £60,000 house that got built were in John Prescott's own constituency, and they went on the market at 190,000, largely because of the cost of the land they were sitting on. And it's that, dear audience, that is the key to the problem. The problem is that you have the expertise in this space now to build affordable, exciting, sustainable houses, but not if you can't afford to sell them as an affordable price because of the cost of the land that they sit on. So here is the good news, and this is what I hope to be able to offer you. I can offer you a pretty good short-term contribution to the problem, because in the long term it is only going to be solved by any government of any colour who is prepared to take hold and have the courage to look at a complete overhaul of the planning issue. And, all right, clever clogs, how about free land? I can offer you free land in large quantities everywhere in the country, including here in the southeast, and including round the corner on the Olympic legacy site, although I have a feeling they've probably squandered most of theirs already. I did try and tell them. The principle is this: if you take the land price out of the cost of building a house, you begin to make it possible for almost everybody in this room to produce a decent, affordable house. So what we're proposing is this: where you've got publicly owned land which is held by the Homes and Communities Agency, land which is held by local authorities, land which is held by the NHS and not given through to the HCA. If you've got that publicly owned land, what you do is retain the freehold of that publicly owned land as a cash-free asset to provide affordable homes. Now, 2 minutes. Right. Let me specify instantly why there's probably more codswallop talked about affordability than anything. My definition of affordability is this: it is roughly 3 times the average family income of what I reckon is around 45 grand. So we're talking about delivering a house at 135, 130 grand, which I believe you can do. If you take the land price out, you can deliver that, and you can deliver quite a decent house. It's called landhold, and it's a fairly simple model. Using the landhold principle, you can buy a conventional 3-bedroom semi with a garden for about 130,000. Now, of course, as a landhold buyer, if you want this to go on being affordable, the land and the freehold which is held within the landhold trust remains within public ownership. In other words, one of the advantages it gives to local authorities is that they can keep some of their family silver by not selling off the freehold of the land. If you buy your house, you buy the leasehold. And if you want to sell it, you can only sell it back to the landhold trust, and you only get a cost of living increase on the uplift. And that means that it remains by definition affordable to the next owner. Now that means as a landhold buyer, of course, you only make that profit in inverted commas. But we're talking about a cohort that is no longer able to buy on the open market at all. So a cost of living increase and the ability to purchase and mortgage your own home is something which is considerably better than a poke in the eye with a stick, and much better than having to rent. So, for 2 million families desperately anxious to mortgage themselves to the hilt with their own money, this is an opportunity to provide that affordable housing. It's simply an idea. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, you country bumpkins, you come up here with your country ways, your clever country ways, and you bedazzle us with schemes that could turn out all to be smoke and mirrors. But will it actually work? Right, okay. I obviously got so annoying with English partnerships that in 2008 they paid for a consultation paper to see if this would work. And the consultation paper says, yes, it works. It would be more profitable to buy on the open market, but it works. English partnership said, well, of course, the trouble is it involves a policy change. And a policy change means taking it back to the Department for Communities and Local Government, who promptly buried it on the basis of patting me on the head and explaining that whilst it was a terribly clever idea, it didn't fit their model, so they weren't going to do it. So that, dear friends, is where we are at the moment. So what the landhold model offers is, to the government it offers, or to those big organisations, a cash-free subsidy to provide affordable housing which you can target anywhere in the country, and because the cost of a house is not cost of construction related but land cost related, you can do it next door to here as well as you can in Cornwall. It offers local authorities the opportunity to deliver affordable housing where they want to for sale, and yet nevertheless retain in the long term the asset value of their land, and it offers 2 million families a chance to own their own home. It's something which is very simple, it's easy to do, and if we wanted to, we could do it now.
Robin, thank you very much. It's a very interesting idea. I suppose on top of my mind is, well, is there a pilot scheme that you ought to be trialling to drive out or to try to see whether it would work? Is there a pilot scheme you propose?
Funnily enough, no. I got very close. I got very close with Bath and North East Somerset because they have a particular problem where they got very close and their chief guy abandoned ship and went off somewhere else. I got very close with the Olympic Legacy Committee, and unfortunately Duncan Innes jumped ship and went off and did something else, and that meant starting again. And for old age pensioners from Somerset who have to get Berry's coaches on a cheap day return.
So where do you go now with it? What's your next strategy for getting this out into the wider world, apart from obviously speaking here?
Well, it's speaking here, and I still keep trying to annoy the Department for Communities and Local Government. I keep trying to annoy local authorities. I keep plugging away at members of Parliament. The trouble is that the housing, I can't tell you how many housing ministers I haven't talked to over the years, because actually what's happening is that the stuff that we want to talk about, even as an idea, never gets that far.
Robin, you'll be back a bit later on to talk on the housing panel, and I'm sure that you will be equally feisty on that. So, Robin Howell, thank you very much for putting his idea across. Thank you for your time.